6 weeks away from Once Human's 1 year anniversary as being out officially across PC and most recently fully launching on mobile, it seems like the game is in trouble. There's been a lot of conjecture even over the last few months, even though the game's technically only been out a year, that the game is in fact dying. So what do? You go ahead and announce some big new game modes. And that's what's been revealed today, a game mode which is called the Raidzone, and it looks likely to be something you can play within the Once Human, I would say, interface, unless I've got it wrong and it ends up being a separate game. And immediately it looks like budget wish Rust, absolutely aping that kind of gameplay where you can raid other players, no weird little Power World creatures by your side or absolutely ripping off Death Stranding, just a straight up get some guns, get some loot, build a base, defend it for your lives as you take on various different monuments to get better loot and more resources. Apparently early access is going to begin on May the 21st, and according to their X account it's a experience. So again, they are listing a bunch of other platforms where you can obviously pick up Once Human. So yeah, I'm going to have to try and clarify whether or not it's actually going to be a game on its own or within the Once Human app. So let's face it, Once Human has had a bit of a rocky ride. Once Human kind of came out of nowhere and then just went massive with its beta windows. Lots of players were getting hyped and excited. Honestly, to me, it was just blending so many kind of games like The Division, but with something more spooky and supernatural like Death Stranding. So that maybe carved out a little niche of its own, but do we really need this kind of game now coming out? Are they trying to capitalise maybe on the upcoming Rust Mobile Edition? Rust is a huge phenomenon. Whether or not you like the kind of gameplay it actually offers, over the years it's got more popular and popular, learning from its mistakes in early access to deliver fresh content on a monthly basis. It is simply the most played Steam survival game consistently, apart from the usual spikes that we get with some newer games. It overtook Ark to have the most survival game players and is leaps ahead of other games like DayZ, even though it was originally inspired by it. Facepunch, developers of Rust, sold the rights for console versions and they came out a good few years ago now as well. So it obviously made sense to them to get a mobile version, especially for their Asian markets where obviously mobile gaming is hugely still more popular than console. So this isn't really new news, it's been around for about 6 months now that Rust would be coming to mobile and it will be operating in other regions, not just Asia. And I guess that's my question, why would you bother playing something like Once Human where it's clearly copycatting everything that Rust is pretty much offering, when quite frankly Rust does it better than any other kind of game of its type. That's not me just fanboying or something here, you can take a look at the Steam reviews, the player numbers, it is fact, it is just really positively reviewed. It's got hundreds of thousands of players logging in every single day. It sits proudly in the top Steam bestsellers. So of course the only way you might beat it is by releasing your version actually before the full version comes out of this. And honestly, you would be hard pressed to say this looks any different from Rust in terms of what it might actually offer. At least Once Human, even with all the weirdness and the Power World stuff like I mentioned, like I said, it did carve its own little niche. So can this actually be a success? Well, obviously centered around mobile gaming with I guess PC maybe being a slight afterthought, I don't know. Once Human was a game that I kind of was a bit behind on the initial reveals, once thinking it was just going to be some horrendous mobile game, and I still kind of feel a bit like that, I ain't gonna lie. And then when I saw their plans for lootable boxes and keys and gambling and stuff that they've added with their cosmetics, it definitely made me really appreciate that I didn't spend much time covering this at all, bar maybe 1 or 2 live streams. So could a Rust-centric version get me involved? Maybe, if it doesn't have the things that I just mentioned. But let's face it, it's definitely gonna. Rust is no actual angel either. They've got their own skins that sell on a regular basis and the private market for that is crazy, with some of them being available for hundreds of dollars, as well as various sites where you can gamble to win different skins. But that has proven to support the game for years and years after its initial full release. And none of it is really pay to win, as long as you don't talk about any of the whiteout suits in the snow and other smaller things. So yeah, I'm not really here to promote Once Human Raidzone, I just think it was interesting that they've gone ahead and made this. And yeah, it seems to just rush it out of nowhere with this trailer, not even a blog to go alongside it. So soon after their mobile launch, is this really pointing to Once Human really having a slump? That's the kind of rage bait, clickbait, hate bait consensus if you go and spend a bit of time on YouTube. But the player numbers kind of back it up as well. From having their huge launch with 210,000 players for a free-to-play game to now only having around 29 to 30,000 peak daily. That's a significant drop, again, for a free-to-play game. Any other paid game, any other game in early access, I would understand it. We've seen some huge games like Power World, lately more games like Enshrouded, and in previous years Valheim drop their numbers, and it's really a common thing now for most of these games, simply there's always loads more others to play. So maybe player numbers aren't everything, and obviously Steam is not including all the new fans that are maybe taking it on board with their mobile devices. And really, that's where they're going to make the bulk of their money, I'm sure, in the future, suited to the markets that really go for the mobile gaming systems. To be fair as well, the review scores are pretty good for Once Human still, 77% positive in the most recent, and even though I've said it's a big drop, a lot of developers would still gladly have 30k players logging in at any one time on a daily basis. But yeah, the problems, if you dig deep enough, go over Reddit and others, people are obviously really upset in the way the server systems were worked in the original beginnings, revealing that they would be wiped every so often. Then there was confusion about whether or not players could play because they'd have to wait for more PvE servers as they were only going to be offering PvP, if I've got that right. I remember some sort of controversy around that. With the season eventually arriving for everyone with new content, but it still seems a bone of contention in some progress being wiped, or that the way that they basically run their game being quite overly confusing, and that's even before we get into the mechanics, with maybe not enough follow through with some onboarding. Basically the game being overcomplicated with various different resources and not enough tutorials or guidance to help you through. Not enough interaction with other players, despite it being billed as a MMO style multiplayer experience. So yeah, there's definitely some blood in the water in terms of people's problems with this. Lastly, not helped by stuff that lots of games still go through, like server queue issues, stability of the game overall, and yeah, them extra MTX concerns a lot of players have had, basically saying that there's too much pay to win and not enough actual being able to earn or even buy the stuff that you really want, instead of having to resort to basically gambling and loot boxes. I try not to be too judgmental on games before I've actually had a chance to play them, but definitely with Once Human I was kind of put off even before seeing it, and when I did eventually play it I was kind of feeling I was in the right. I'm not to say it's not a bad game, but it just wasn't really doing anything for me amazing. So am I interested in Raidzone? I don't know. It'd have to be a hard one for me to really try this, spend significant time when I have got Rust sitting there. But as a free-to-play experience, maybe I should give it a go and not judge it so much on the other issues that have affected its main game. At least until I see some of the loot boxes that I'm sure will be added for myself to this one. Let me know what you think about this. Has this got the potential to at least compete somewhat with Rust or at least other games like DayZ? Will this take you away from playing the main game mode at all, or even get you back into playing Once Human if you've dropped off? Put your comments down below, leave a like, and make sure you subscribe if you want to hear the best in survival games, action RPG news, guides and gameplay. I'll see you rat bags later.